amid the splendor of a prosperous kingdom, where power and prestige reign supreme, a forbidden love shakes the foundation of the royal palace. Eniola, the wife of Ghana's most powerful chief, finds herself ensnared in a whirlwind of passion with her husband's adventurous younger brother. Temptation, love, and betrayal. How will this tangled web of emotions shape their fates and the future of the kingdom? Join us as we unravel this gripping tale, where every glance and decision reshapes destiny. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more captivating tales, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us on this exciting journey ahead. Eniola had everything a woman could ever desire as the wife of Chief Menor, one of the wealthiest and most respected men in Ghana. Her life was a tapestry of luxury and privilege, woven with golden threads of power and influence. The palace where she lived was a sprawling masterpiece, adorned with intricate carvings and the finest silks. The vast lands surrounding it stretched far beyond the horizon, a testament to the chief's unparalleled wealth and authority. Eniola's position as the chief's wife granted her a revered status among the people, earning her both admiration and envy. Yet, despite the grandeur and the endless privileges, Eniola's heart carried a quiet ache, a sense of incompleteness she couldn't ignore. Chief Menor was a man of immense generosity and wisdom, admired by many for his leadership. But his unwavering dedication to his duties often left Eniola feeling like a shadow in her own home. While he dealt with affairs of the land and his people, Eniola found herself alone in the vast palace halls, yearning for companionship and emotional connection. The laughter of children, the warmth of shared moments, and the thrill of passion were missing from her gilded life. One fateful day, Fola, the younger brother of Chief Menor, returned from an extended journey across distant lands. Unlike his elder brother, who carried the weight of responsibility with solemn grace, Fola exuded an air of adventure and spontaneity. He was a man of stories and charm, his eyes sparkling with the excitement of the unknown. Every room he entered seemed to light up with his presence, and his laughter was infectious. As Eniola watched him regale the men in the courtyard with tales of his travels, a strange flutter stirred within her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. It was subtle at first, but it grew with each passing moment. Could it be that she was drawn to him? Eniola wrestled with her emotions, determined to remain loyal to her husband. She was bound by tradition, honor, and a deep sense of duty. Yet, every time Fola visited the palace, her resolve wavered. His carefree spirit and captivating smile stood in stark contrast to Chief Menor's somber demeanor. Fola brought color to her otherwise monotone existence, and she found herself yearning for his presence in ways she could not explain. Their interactions became a delicate dance, filled with stolen glances and fleeting touches. During family gatherings, their eyes would meet across the room, and a silent understanding passed between them, a spark that neither could ignore. Fola, too, seemed to feel the pull, lingering in Eniola's presence longer than necessary. Their conversations, though seemingly innocent, carried undertones of a deeper connection, one that neither dared to voice but both understood implicitly. Eniola tried to bury her feelings, distracting herself with palace duties and charitable endeavors. But it was futile. Each encounter with Fola reignited the fire she struggled to extinguish. The intensity of their connection became impossible to ignore, and the walls of restraint they had carefully built began to crumble. The turning point came on a quiet evening when the palace was cloaked in the soft hues of twilight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Fola found Eniola alone in the garden. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, the tension between them palpable. They began with polite conversation, their words light and inconsequential. But as the moments stretched on, the space between them seemed to shrink. Fola reached out, his hand brushing hers, a simple touch that ignited a storm within her. Eniola hesitated, her mind screaming for restraint. But her heart overruled her reason. Their lips met in a kiss that defied logic and tradition, marking the beginning of an affair that would forever alter the course of their lives. The days that followed were a whirlwind of passion and guilt. Eniola found herself living a double life, torn between her loyalty to Chief Menor and the intoxicating allure of Fola. Each stolen moment with him was a mix of exhilaration and dread. She loved her husband in her own way, appreciating all he had given her. Yet her heart craved the vitality and freedom she felt with Fola. Their secret rendezvous became the highlight of her days, a dangerous escape from the confines of her structured life. Soon, the affair began to draw attention. Servants whispered in hushed tones, their sharp eyes catching fleeting interactions between Eniola and Fola. Though they dared not confront their mistress, the palace buzzed with speculation. Eniola, aware of the growing scrutiny, tried to be more discreet, but her emotions often betrayed her. The thrill of the forbidden had consumed her, making it nearly impossible to conceal her feelings. Despite the looming danger, Eniola and Fola continued their clandestine meetings. They found solace in the hidden corners of the palace, under the cover of darkness in the garden or in quiet alcoves during the day. Each moment they shared felt like a stolen treasure, precious yet fraught with risk. The weight of their secret bore heavily on Eniola's conscience. She loved Chief Menor, respected him deeply. But the passion she shared with Fola was unlike anything she had ever known. It awakened a part of her that had long been dormant, filling her with a sense of vitality she hadn't felt in years. As their affair deepened, Eniola grappled with the reality of her actions. The duality of her life took its toll, leaving her torn between duty and desire. She knew the path she was on could only lead to heartbreak. Yet the pull of her emotions was too strong to resist. In the quiet of her chambers, she often questioned herself, wrestling with the choices that had brought her to this point. Each glance from the palace servants felt sharper, more scrutinizing. She feared their whispers and dreaded the thought of one of them speaking to Chief Menor. The stakes were unimaginably high. If the chief discovered her secret, the consequences would be catastrophic. It wouldn't just break his heart, it could fracture the family, tearing apart everything she and Menor had built together. Yet, despite her fears, Eniola found herself drawn to Fola like a moth to an irresistible flame. She knew the risks, but the pull of their connection was too strong to resist. It was as though their fate had already been written, a story destined to end in fire. Chief Menor, oblivious to the rumors coursing through the palace halls, began to sense something was amiss. Eniola had grown distant, her laughter quieter, her gaze often far away. In the past, her warmth and attentiveness had been a source of strength for him. Now, her smiles felt like shadows of what they used to be. When he asked if something troubled her, Eniola would respond with soft reassurances, claiming she was merely tired. But Menor was no fool, he could see the cracks forming in their once solid foundation. Though he tried to suppress it, an uneasy feeling began to stir within him, gnawing at his trust in her. Meanwhile, Fola's visits to the palace had become increasingly frequent. To Menor, It was heartening to see his younger brother more involved in family affairs. Yet, a subtle shift in the dynamics caught his attention. Eniola and Fola's interactions, though seemingly harmless, carried an undercurrent of something unspoken. The brief glances they exchanged, the fleeting smiles, they unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite articulate. The chief's instincts, honed over years of leadership, told him that something was brewing beneath the surface. Eniola worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion of normalcy. She laughed at Menar's jokes, joined him for evening meals, and fulfilled her duties as his wife with practiced precision. But beneath her composed exterior, a storm raged. Her heart was a battlefield, torn between the life she had shared with Menar and the consuming passion she felt for Fola. The more she tried to suppress her feelings, the more they seemed to grow, threatening to overwhelm her. In the servants' quarters, the whispers grew louder. Speculation about Eniola and Fola had become the subject of hushed conversations. Eniola and Fola knew they had to be more discreet, but their shared moments carried an addictive thrill, heightened by the danger of being discovered. They began meeting in hidden corners of the palace, dimly lit hallways, secluded alcoves, and the vast, shadowy gardens. Each encounter was a mix of urgency and fear, but the risks only seemed to deepen their bond. One evening, under the moonlit canopy of the palace gardens, Fola's voice broke the tense silence between them. "We can't keep living like this, Eniola," he said, his tone both pleading and resolute. "Sneaking around isn't sustainable. Maybe it's time we left all this behind. We could start over somewhere far away. Just the two of us." Eniola's breath caught in her throat. The idea of escaping with Fola was intoxicating, but it also terrified her. She thought of Chief Menar, his unwavering loyalty, the life of stability and respect he had provided her. Could she truly abandon it all? "What about the chief?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What about the family?" Fola reached for her hand, his grip firm yet tender. "I don't want to hurt my brother, but I can't imagine life without you. We have to make a choice, Eniola, before everything spirals out of control." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Eniola's heart was a tangle of emotions. She knew that choosing Fola meant leaving behind the palace, the life she had known, and the man who had once been her world. Yet, the thought of losing Fola felt unbearable. As the days passed, Chief Menar's unease deepened. He began observing Eniola and Fola more closely. Though he kept his suspicions to himself, he didn't want to believe that the woman he loved and his own brother could betray him. Yet, the subtle signs, Eniola's growing detachment, Fola's lingering presence, became impossible to ignore. Menar's instincts told him that the truth lay hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Late one night, as the palace settled into quiet, Menar summoned his most trusted servant. "Have you noticed anything unusual lately?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with determination. The servant hesitated, weighing his words carefully. Speaking against the chief's wife and brother was fraught with danger. Finally, he replied, "There have been rumors, Chief. Some say Lady Eniola and Master Fola have been spending more time together than seems appropriate." Menar's heart sank, though he had feared it. Hearing the words spoken aloud made it real. His mind raced with questions. Could Eniola, the woman he had trusted with his heart, truly be betraying him? And could Fola, his own flesh and blood, be complicit in such a betrayal? determined to uncover the truth. Menor decided to act. He began shadowing Eniola and Fola, blending into the shadows of the palace to watch them unnoticed. One evening, he followed them into the gardens, hiding behind a large tree as they met in the moonlight. Their voices were low but filled with unmistakable emotion. Menor's heart shattered as he watched them embrace, their connection undeniable. The pain of betrayal coursed through him like a blade. The trust he had placed in Eniola, the bond he had shared with Fola, it was all unraveling before his eyes. As he stood there, hidden but utterly exposed to the weight of the truth, Menor knew he could no longer remain silent. With a heavy heart, he returned to his chambers, his mind swirling with anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss. The time had come to confront Eniola and Fola, to demand answers and decide the fate of his fractured family. He knew the path ahead would be painful, but the truth could no longer be ignored. The next morning, Kwame summoned Eniola to his study. The air in the room was heavy with tension, and his expression was a mix of stern resolve and deep-seated pain. Eniola's hands trembled as she pushed open the ornate doors, stepping into a space that had always symbolized authority and respect. Today, however, it felt more like a tribunal. Her heart pounded wildly as she met the chief's piercing gaze, each beat echoing the fear and guilt that gripped her. Kwame's voice, though calm, carried a weight that bore down on Eniola like a storm cloud ready to burst. "Eniola," he began, each syllable sharp and deliberate. "I know what has been happening between you and Fola." His tone left no room for denial, and Eniola felt the blood drain from her face. She opened her mouth, desperate to explain, to deflect, but the words caught in her throat. "Chief, I don't," she stammered. But he raised a hand to silence her. His movements were measured, yet each carried an undeniable finality. "Enough," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. "I have seen enough. Your actions have not only betrayed my trust but have shaken the very foundation of this family. I am deeply disappointed in both you and Fola." His eyes, though steely, betrayed a flicker of heartbreak, a reflection of the bonds that had been shattered. Eniola's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice trembling as she tried to respond. "Please, Kwame, try to understand. I never intended for this to happen. It's just what?" His words came swiftly, slicing through her feeble attempt at justification. "Just a moment of weakness. Just a choice to disregard the sanctity of this family. You have betrayed me in the worst possible way. Eniola. This scandal, this betrayal, it threatens to ruin everything we have built." Eniola's tears spilled over, and her shoulders sagged under the weight of his words. She realized, in that moment, the irreparable damage their secret had wrought. Kwame's trust, once unshakable, was now in ruins, and the future of their family lay fractured, uncertain. Meanwhile, Fola's reaction to the chief's discovery was one of sheer panic. He had always been known for his impulsive nature, but this situation demanded a level of maturity and decision-making he wasn't sure he possessed. The gravity of their actions now loomed over him, forcing him to confront a painful choice: should he leave the palace and start anew with Eniola, or stay and face the consequences of their betrayal? Later that evening, Fola met Eniola in their usual secret spot, a secluded corner of the palace gardens. The once beautiful refuge now seemed cloaked in despair, its vibrant colors dulled by the weight of their predicament. Fola's face was drawn, his voice heavy with resignation. Eniola. We can't keep this up, he began. Kwame knows everything. We need to decide what we're going to do. Eniola, already consumed by guilt and anguish, shook her head. I can't bear to see the chief hurt. Fola. But I also can't imagine a life without you. Fola's frustration boiled over. We have to choose. Eniola. If we stay, we'll face the chief's wrath and the disgrace of the royal family. If we leave, we'll lose everything we've ever known. There's no easy way out. Torn between her loyalty to her husband and her love for Fola, Eniola's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. The thought of abandoning the palace, her home, her family, her identity, was terrifying. Yet staying meant confronting the fallout of their forbidden relationship. A reality she wasn't sure she could endure. As Eniola and Fola wrestled with their choices, Kwame was already taking decisive action. He summoned Fola to his study. The room once again filled with an oppressive silence. The chief's demeanor was colder this time, his voice like ice. Fola, he said. You have betrayed me and disgraced this family. Your presence here is no longer acceptable. I am ordering you to leave the palace immediately. Fola met the chief's glare with a mix of defiance and regret. Kwame, he replied, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. I am sorry for what has happened. But Eniola and I are in this together. If you cast me out, I will take her with me. Kwame's expression hardened, his authority unwavering. You will do no such thing, he declared. Eniola will remain here, where she belongs. You, however, will leave and never return. Fola's heart sank at the finality of the chief's words. He had no choice but to comply. With a heavy heart, he left the study, knowing he had lost everything that mattered to him. Before Fola departed the palace, he and Eniola met one last time in the garden. The air was cool, and the once vibrant flowers seemed muted, as if mourning the end of their love. Eniola's eyes glistened with tears, her voice breaking as she spoke. I'm sorry, Fola, she whispered. I never wanted it to end like this. Fola took her hands in his own trembling. I know, Eniola, he replied. But we have to face the consequences of what we've done. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. As Fola walked away, Eniola watched him disappear into the distance. Her heart shattered. The garden, once their sanctuary, now stood as a solemn reminder of a love that could never be. Both Eniola and Fola were left to grapple with the aftermath of their choices. Their paths forever altered by a love that defied the boundaries of duty and trust. They shared a final, lingering embrace, the weight of unspoken words pressing heavily between them. Fola's arms lingered a moment too long before he turned to leave, his steps deliberate yet hesitant. Eniola stood motionless, her gaze fixed on his retreating figure as her heart fractured with each footfall. The air seemed colder, heavier, as the distance between them grew. A chasm of love and pain carved by circumstances neither could fully control. As Fola disappeared into the horizon, Eniola felt an unbearable emptiness take root within her. Their love, once a source of warmth and vitality, had brought nothing but anguish and discord, leaving her to carry the burden of loss alone. Returning to the palace, she felt like a ghost, haunted by memories of what could never be. Within the grand halls of the palace, Kwame grappled with the aftermath of the scandal that had shaken his family to its core. The weight of leadership bore down on him as he convened a meeting with his closest advisors. The room was tense. The usual air of deference replaced by an undercurrent of unease. The advisors, though loyal, could not hide their concern over the damage inflicted on the royal reputation. "We must act swiftly," one advisor urged. His tone measured but firm. "The people are watching. They will judge not only Eniola but all of us by how we handle this crisis." Kwame's expression hardened, his resolve evident despite the turmoil within. "This family has endured storms before. And we will endure this one as well. Eniola will stay in the palace, but out of public view for now. Together, we will rebuild trust, both within these walls and with our people." Though his words were resolute, Kwame felt the strain of betrayal and heartbreak gnawing at his spirit. Healing the fractures within his family and restoring the honor of the throne would be an arduous journey. But he was determined to succeed. Eniola, however, found little solace within the confines of the palace. Once a vibrant and integral member of the royal household, she now felt like an outsider. Her movements were restricted, her presence a quiet reminder of the scandal that had unraveled so much. The once familiar corridors seemed alien, echoing with whispers of pity and judgment. Servants avoided her gaze, their footsteps quick and discreet as if her very presence was a shadow to be avoided. Days turned into weeks, each one longer than the last. Eniola's isolation weighed on her, her vibrant spirit dulled by regret and longing. Her world had shrunk to the walls of the palace, and the freedom she once knew felt like a distant memory. Though she sought ways to make amends, offering to assist with palace duties, showing deference to Kwame's authority, her efforts seemed to go unnoticed. Her existence reduced to a ghostly echo of what had been. Beyond the palace gates, the scandal was the talk of the kingdom. Whispers of Eniola's affair with Fola spread like wildfire, igniting debates among the townspeople. Some expressed sympathy, seeing her as a woman caught between love and duty, while others condemned her actions as a betrayal of sacred trust. Kwame, understanding the gravity of the situation, addressed the people in a public speech. "My family is not immune to hardship," he declared, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "Yet, it is through unity and perseverance that we will restore our honor. Let us not dwell on division but move forward together as a kingdom." The speech, though eloquent, had mixed effects. While some were reassured by his sincerity, others remained skeptical, their faith in the royal family shaken. Far from the palace, Fola sought refuge in a distant land. In a quiet, unassuming village, he tried to rebuild his life, far removed from the chaos of his past. Yet, even as he worked to establish a new identity, the memories of Eniola lingered. A bittersweet reminder of a love that defied yet was defeated by the constraints of their worlds. Nights were the hardest, the stillness of his new home offering no escape from the haunting echoes of what he had left behind. Back at the palace, Eniola's days were filled with introspection. Her longing for Fola was matched only by the guilt she felt toward Kwame. She poured herself into acts of service, assisting with palace projects and seeking to support Kwame in his endeavors. Her efforts were genuine, yet the scars of betrayal remained fresh. The distance between her and Kwame was palpable, their interactions polite but devoid of warmth. Time, however, has a way of softening even the hardest edges. Kwame, though deeply hurt, began to notice Eniola's genuine attempts to make amends. Slowly, He allowed her to take a more active role in palace life. One day, as they worked side by side on a charitable initiative for the kingdom's poorest villages, Kwame broke the silence. "I see what you are trying to do, Eniola," he said. His voice measured yet sincere. "It's not easy, for either of us. But I acknowledge your efforts. Forgiveness is a long road. But I believe it's a road we can walk together." Tears welled in Eniola's eyes as she looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I have made mistakes. But I am determined to prove my loyalty and love for this family. I will not falter again." As the days passed, the tentative steps toward reconciliation began to grow steadier. Though the road ahead was fraught with challenges, both Eniola and Kwame knew that healing was possible. It would take time, but the seeds of hope had been planted. And with care, they might one day blossom into something new, something stronger. As the palace adjusted to the new order, Kwame and Eniola embarked on the arduous journey of rebuilding their fractured relationship. Though their bond remained far from perfect, they began learning to navigate the changed circumstances with cautious hope. Eniola, ever resilient, poured herself into her work and personal growth, striving to demonstrate her unwavering support for her husband. She hoped that, with time and patience, their connection could be restored. Meanwhile, the palace began to regain a semblance of normalcy. But an undercurrent of unease lingered, ghosts of the recent scandal haunting its halls. Kwame and Eniola collaborated on several royal initiatives, their shared responsibilities becoming a platform for tentative reconciliation. The process was fraught with challenges. Trust, once shattered, proved difficult to rebuild. Yet Eniola remained steadfast, determined to prove her dedication not only to her marriage but also to her role as a royal figure. She tirelessly involved herself in the palace's day-to-day affairs, her commitment speaking louder than words. Slowly, Kwame began to take notice. He cautiously acknowledged Eniola's efforts, granting her greater involvement in public events and allowing her to reclaim some of her former influence. This gradual restoration of trust mirrored a similar shift among the palace staff, who, though initially wary, started to respect Eniola once again as they witnessed her humility and resolve. The path to healing was a long and winding one, marked by moments of progress and setbacks alike. Eniola found solace in her work and the quiet intervals she spent in self-reflection. These moments allowed her to confront the weight of her past choices, bolstering her resolve to move forward. Her heart still ached for Fola, a bittersweet reminder of what had been lost. But she understood the necessity of focusing on her responsibilities and the life she was striving to rebuild. One day, the precarious equilibrium of palace life was disrupted by an unexpected visitor. Fola had returned, his presence stirring a storm of emotions. Having lived in a distant land since the scandal, Fola had been unable to escape the memories of his past or the love he still carried for Eniola. His return, unannounced and enigmatic, left Eniola stunned and conflicted. She had spent so long trying to move on. Yet the sight of Fola awakened dormant feelings she had worked hard to suppress. Fola, too, grappled with uncertainty. He had returned to the palace with no illusions, fully aware of the complications his presence might cause. Yet, driven by a need for closure and a desire to atone for his role in the scandal, he felt compelled to face the past. Kwame, upon hearing of Fola's arrival, approached the situation with caution. His instincts were to protect the fragile stability of the palace and his own marriage. Yet he decided to meet Fola, if only to hear him out. During their meeting, Fola expressed heartfelt remorse. His words were unvarnished, his tone earnest. He apologized for his role in the scandal and for the pain he had caused, offering his assistance in repairing the damage. Kwame listened in silence, his emotions a mix of skepticism and reluctant empathy. He recognized the sincerity in Fola's apology but also the scars left behind. After much deliberation, Mina made a decision: Fola could remain at the palace temporarily, under strict conditions to respect its boundaries. Fola accepted, grateful for the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to the healing process. As days turned into weeks, Fola's presence began to influence the palace in subtle but significant ways. He immersed himself in palace affairs, assisting with projects and making earnest efforts to mend the fissures he had helped create. His actions, combined with his respectful demeanor, gradually softened the reservations of those around him. Even Kwame, while still cautious, found himself appreciating Fola's contributions. For Eniola, Fola's return was a double-edged sword. She appreciated his attempts at reconciliation yet struggled with the whirlwind of emotions his presence evoked. Their private conversations, though fraught with tension, became a necessary outlet for both. Together, they confronted the truths of their past, acknowledging mistakes and trying to understand each other's perspectives. These discussions, though painful, provided a form of catharsis. In time, Eniola and Fola reached an unspoken agreement. Their love, once passionate and all-consuming, belonged to the past. The choices they had made and the consequences they had faced rendered any rekindling of their relationship impossible. Yet within this painful acknowledgement was a quiet sense of closure. They each resolved to move forward, carrying the lessons of their shared history as a guide for the future. For Eniola, this resolution was bittersweet but grounding. She found comfort in knowing she had faced her past with honesty and grace, and she was determined to channel her experiences into a better tomorrow. As the palace continued its slow journey toward healing, a new chapter was beginning, not without its challenges, but with a renewed sense of hope. As time passed, Kwame and Eniola remained steadfast in their commitment to rebuild the fragile bridge of their relationship. The palace, once in disarray, gradually began to regain a semblance of its former grandeur. Yet, the lingering shadow of the scandal, though faint, still hung in the air like a distant storm cloud, a reminder of the upheaval they had endured. The path to healing was neither quick nor easy, but with each passing day, Kwame's unwavering public support for Eniola and her increasing involvement in royal duties began to restore some of the respect and trust that had been tarnished. Together, they worked tirelessly to salvage their reputation, brick by brick, against the weight of public scrutiny. Meanwhile, the dynamic between Eniola and Fola, once close, had evolved into a more distant, yet respectful, interaction. Fola, ever true to his word, had fulfilled his promise to make amends, and his decision to leave the palace was a poignant one. His departure was marked by an emotion that was both heavy and liberating, a mixture of sadness and a quiet sense of resolution. For Eniola and Kwame, it signaled a pivotal moment, a step forward, albeit bittersweet, toward healing and moving on from the past. As they stood together at the precipice of a new chapter, Kwame and Eniola faced the future with cautious optimism. They understood all too well that their journey was far from complete, and the scars of their trials would not fade overnight. Yet, they were resolved to navigate the challenges ahead, not as two individuals adrift in uncertainty, but as partners, united in their shared determination to rebuild their bond and create something stronger than what they had lost. The palace, once again, began to feel like home, infused with the light of renewed hope and possibility. With Fola's departure, Eniola and Kwame found the space they needed to focus on their own future, one that was no longer overshadowed by the weight of old mistakes. Together, they invested time and energy into repairing their relationship, understanding that trust, once broken, required patience and effort to restore. As they worked on various royal projects, spending more time in each other's company, Kwame's trust in Eniola, slowly but steadily, began to rebuild. Their shared efforts, focused on the well-being of the kingdom, became the foundation of a new connection, one based on mutual respect and understanding. Eniola, having found new purpose in her role as the chief's wife, embraced her responsibilities with a renewed sense of dedication. She poured her heart into charitable work, helping those in need and supporting the local community. Her compassion and commitment to service became a beacon of hope, not only for the people of the kingdom but also for the palace staff, who had once whispered of scandal and betrayal. Eniola's actions, though small in the grand scheme of things, began to heal the scars left by the past, restoring her reputation and rekindling the admiration of those around her. Though the past could never be erased, Eniola and Kwame no longer viewed it as a shadow that loomed over them, but rather as a lesson learned, a catalyst for growth and change. One day, as Eniola was tending to her duties, a letter arrived from Fola. In his words, he revealed that he had discovered a new sense of purpose in his life, dedicating himself to helping a community in need. He expressed deep gratitude for the opportunity to make amends and move forward. Reading his words, Eniola felt a mix of emotions, a sense of closure, relief, and even a bittersweet nostalgia. The love they had once shared, intense and transformative, was now a chapter in her past. Yet, the letter also marked the final release of a connection that had once defined so much of her life. She realized, with a quiet sense of peace, that while their paths had diverged, the lessons of their love would remain with her. In addition to his words, Fola included a small token, a necklace he had kept as a reminder of their time together. Eniola, after a moment's reflection, decided to keep the necklace, not as a tether to her past, but as a symbol of the journey she had undergone. It served as a quiet reminder of how far she had come and how much she had learned. It was a piece of her history that she could carry with her, but no longer one that would hold her back. As Kwame and Eniola continued their efforts to rebuild trust, they found new strength in their partnership. They attended royal events together, worked side by side on public duties, and supported each other through the highs and lows. The palace, once again, became a place of warmth and cooperation, where love, healing, and forgiveness could flourish. The scars of the past were still there, but they were no longer as prominent, overshadowed by the resilience they had shown in overcoming them. As time passed, Eniola and Kwame grew closer. They learned to appreciate each other's strengths and to lean on one another during difficult times. Their relationship, though irrevocably changed, was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. Instead, it was characterized by the shared experiences that had tested their endurance, but also deepened their connection. Together, they were stronger, and their bond was fortified by the efforts they had made to rebuild trust and understanding. Their renewed partnership, built on a foundation of forgiveness, helped restore their place in the hearts of the kingdom's people. The palace, once again, became a symbol of resilience and recovery. It was a testament to the idea that even in the wake of turmoil, there could be hope for renewal. The palace was no longer a place of whispers and doubts but a beacon of strength and perseverance, a place where the royal family had learned, through hardship, to emerge stronger and more united than ever before. With time, the palace and its inhabitants adapted to a new era, one of peace, understanding, and cooperation. Kwame and Eniola, now fully aligned in their vision for the future, continued to grow in both their personal relationship and their public duties. Together, they presented a united front, dedicated to their people and their kingdom. Eniola's work in the community flourished, and she found deep fulfillment in the lives she was able to touch. Her efforts were not only restoring the faith of the people in their royal family, but they were also creating a lasting legacy of compassion and service. Kwame, ever supportive, stood beside Eniola, recognizing the profound impact she was having on the kingdom and the hearts of its people. Their collaborative efforts, both in the palace and beyond, became a model of leadership, hope, and enduring love. In the end, Eniola's tale is one of deep regret, lost love, and hard-won redemption. She stood at the crossroads of passion and duty, torn between the life she had built with Kwame and the irresistible pull of forbidden love with Fola. The consequences of her actions were inevitable, trust was broken, and the palace would never be the same. But through the pain, Eniola found strength in her determination to rebuild her life, to regain her sense of self, and to restore the honor she had once jeopardized. Thank you for being a part of this emotional journey. If you want to stay connected and explore more powerful stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us.